Hi, so we can get started. Thank you for joining us in this webinar about university digital ecosystems and agile digital products. I'm Marcos Villaseñor and work as user experience lead here at President. For live viewers, please add your questions to the chat at the bottom of your screen, and I'll try to reply to them at the end. So let's get started. But before we delve into how your digital ecosystem can become an agile product as well, let's start by defining what we mean by some of these terms. When we say digital products, we don't only mean applications, apps, or other pieces of software, but also anything that is built through code, irrespective of which device or devices it exists in. This means anything from WordPress blogs to extended reality applications, including all the systems you're familiar with. So, for example, websites driven by content management systems, student information systems, library catalogs, customer relationship management systems, and so on. But as you will know, not all digital products are created in an agile fashion. Agile digital products, broadly, are researched, tested, built, and iterated with agile methodologies. Their main attribute is that they are never seen as finished, and every release of the product is only a stepping stone in a process of a constant improvement. So from this point of view, you, as the owner of the entire university digital real estate, or whatever part of it, you own or are part of a team that owns a digital product. But very likely this is not an agile product at all. While there might be some elements of agile in place, it's probably still very far from the truly agile products we all know and love, from Spotify to Slack. So specializing in the higher education sector, we're well acquainted with the challenges universities face. It's very likely, for example, that your digital product has sprawled over the years without much control. This could be a sprawl of content. So, for example, your website now has hundreds of thousands of pages. Or it can be a sprawl of system, as a collection of out-of-the-box solutions, but because of a pressing need, that don't quite fit together. Which leads me to another challenge. These systems probably do not integrate in a patchwork fashion if they integrate at all. But instead of getting a cohesive experience, users are bounced around systems with different visual patterns, passwords, and so on. Or instead of integrating in real time through an elegant API, these systems talk to each other by dumping CSV files every 24 hours or things like that. So these systems lack that immediacy. And new systems can come into this group of systems with great promise, but then fail to deliver because they don't fit well into any part of the existing ones. A reason for the lack of integration might be that some of these systems are either at their core or on some level relics from the past. Maybe the provider went out of business, or your solution is too customized to upgrade effectively, or maybe the system is too big to migrate, or is simply designed to take the data it holds to its digital grave. But sometimes there are other ghosts of systems past. Business procedures and even content were created to fit a system that no longer exists. The teams that own, created, and or use them might be too committed to them to realize that these workflows are actually a hindrance. So what once was a clever hack to overcompensate for something that the system lacked is now an active blocker. And this disjointed, state, organization-centered digital product has severe effects on morale within the university. Faculty and other stakeholders might feel the workflows required to compensate for the lack of integration or for the legacy systems that you have are too complex and waste their time. And they might also feel that these clunky systems do not offer the features they want, which they might have seen elsewhere, or which they might try to get through another system. And it also contributes to student dissatisfaction because current students grow frustrated at the lack of a joined-up experience or at having to use interface patterns they haven't seen since they were children. And when we talk about students now being digital natives, isn't it important to remember that most new undergraduate students this year are younger than Google and are as old as the first iPod. So that, I mean, that's how dramatic the fact that these students are digital natives is. And these can be particularly jarring if your recruitment pages contrast radically. So as with the image here, your digital estate might feel like a fake town from a film. Except you actually expect students to move into the apartments that are nothing but a cardboard facade. And if you face any of these challenges, I'm totally sure you want and probably have tried to change things. But sometimes universities can be highly siloed organizations, and the best intentions, even with the support of senior management, end up creating only marginal change, or actually lead to digital teams to come out worse off out of the experience, not least because of increasing cynicism at how everyone complains, but no one really embraces change. As I said, one of our focus areas at present is the digital transformation of universities. So like our clients, we're familiar with the reasons situations like the ones I just described came into being and the challenges we face into doing anything about it. In proper iterative fashion, we're always thinking on how to approach this best. Personally, I spend a lot of time thinking on how to enable universities and other organizations to become truly digital. And this, of course, happens in a broad picture where higher education is changing, and digital needs to be at the heart of this change. So we're now at the point where failing to adapt will see universities fall behind in terms of offering a modern, relevant product to students. So universities now do not face a situation where there would be a benefit in adapting. It's really we are at a point now where it's adapt or die. And universities really need to be at the forefront of technological change, and they face more some of the challenges at a very senior level, because they either end up attempting to procure giant, expensive digital transformations that never get off the ground, or they get stuck in a cycle of strategy and vision projects that never lead to anything tangible. So they lack a cohesive vision that then would allow for the transformation of the digital estate. So how can we change this? As I imagine many of you are, I am very wary of both listicles of the 5 things your university should do type things, and articles or seminars that purport to teach you the secrets of, say, big companies like Amazon. And yet, I do think that there are things that universities could learn from a series of very specific things from product teams, whether big or small. The reality is that in the digital world, there are no secrets. Just time-tested and really well-documented best practice. And of course, while your university doesn't command the resources that something like Airbnb currently has, it can learn from the methodology that got its founders from their bedroom office to their Series A round. But before we delve into that, I would like to give a bit of context of the history of Agile and how it came to be the methodology to build digital products. So Agile isn't a synonym with digital, as we've seen. In fact, until relatively recently, digital products were built using a waterfall framework, where one process is completed thoroughly before the next can begin, in an inexorable march to a finished product with no space for iteration. So software was essentially rebuilt in the past. New features were only shipped at the next big bang. For example, the only updates had to do with particularly egregious bug fixes. And when people wanted new things, they had to wait for the new release of the system to come out. And Microsoft Windows is a great example of this. And this in part was driven by the physical nature of software. So before the internet could really be used for something else rather than present formatted text and images, software lived in pieces of plastic and had to be shipped around the world in container ships and lorries. So making small iterations meant duplicating new disks, printing packages, boxing the disk, delivering them to the stores, and so on. But the physical nature of software was not the only reason this happened. It essentially, everything was produced in this way. So cars are a good example. Every year, a new car would be designed and rolled out in a big bang. One could argue that every model was a slight iteration. But in order to keep cars sexy, manufacturers tend to rebuild at least certain parts pretty radically, if not every year, every 3 to 5 years. And even today, software that has no physical distribution and lives entirely on the web tends to be redeveloped waterfall and big bang fashion. An example is Machine Magazine, a digital publication for, of all people, web designers and developers, that recently went a really radical big bang redesign. But this also extends to organizations across the board. So every few years, an external provider builds a CMS or a version of a learning management system or a CRM, most often from scratch. And there is little ability to deliver value through incremental change. There's just this one big bang. And much like digital products can be fully waterfall, physical products can be developed using agile methods. In fact, the entire idea of Agile has its roots in the auto industry. In the Toyota production system, implemented by Toyota in the middle of the 20th century. Here, for example, we see a Kanban board in the 1960s at a Toyota plant. For those of you not familiar with the term, Kanban boards are a really common tool used in Agile software development, but in this case are being used to produce cards. But even though the seed of Agile came from a different tree, it flourished on the fertile ground of digital. And it makes sense. Now, most software offers a subscription model. Apps and other pieces of software can be updated in real time on the user's devices. And websites are even easier to update. Most software now doesn't even have versions numbers anymore. It is constantly improved, not only with bug fixes, but with new features. In Agile cycles, a team will prototype and test possible solutions, only building them when they are ready. There are many flavors of Agile, but they have all in common two core aspects. So the first one of these is that everything starts from the end user. This doesn't mean business needs are not considered, but in a true Agile environment, a team won't ship a feature if it doesn't create value for users in some way, and this has been tested. And the second characteristic is that the end goal is continuous improvement, not just a newer version of the system. So big changes need to happen because of a reason, and teams are always figuring out how to deliver value through small changes. I already talked about the disparity of resources between university teams and venture capital fueled startups or public companies worth billions of dollars. Sometimes when we look at our capacities and try to do Agile, we might feel, like in the picture, that at best we will only be able to deliver a sad, imperfect copy of what these big digital teams are doing. But as I had mentioned, this doesn't have to be the case. In fact, what I want to suggest is not that you should become an imitation of a product team, but your own product team for your own product. And because your product is unique, your organizations and methods will be too. So here are some small steps taken from product teams, big and small, that can help you become the product team you need to be for yourself. So the first lesson we can take is do not think about websites, do not think about systems, think about a digital ecosystem. So internally, however, universities tend to not conceive this digital ecosystem. They tend to conceive a difference between external facing websites and internal systems as completely different things. So on one corner stands marketing with the task of recruiting students and building the university's brand. And then on the other hand, on the other corner stand IT and other services delivering the digital aspect of the student experience and helping staff. But it's time to break the silos, which make no sense to users. The same person that was once a prospective student now uses the same website every day to support their studies. They can change fundamentally, and nor should their experience. The same experience should be carried through from recruitment to studying to graduation and beyond. And it makes sense to conceive the entire digital estate as a single ecosystem. It makes business sense. So for example, will the new CRM integrate into the website? Can the online learning take advantage of the LMS used by face-to-face students or vice versa? Is the CMS flexible enough to have stakeholders and faculties contribute to explaining our research to the world? So these questions are best answered by a single team that's responsible for the entirety of this digital ecosystem. In an ideal world, all universities would be organized like that, with a single system, with a single team that owns the entirety of the digital experience. But we know it's in the real world, this might not always be possible. But still, just understanding that these systems are interconnected and need to be is valuable. So break your silos, introduce this concept to stakeholders across campus, and if you have more than one campus, across cities, across countries. The second step is to become an Agile evangelist. So very frequently, teams and stakeholders across the university might feel frustrated about parts of the digital ecosystem, like why can't we do this? Why can't I make a page about that? Why don't we have this feature? And sometimes they can even become very frustrated. So as the owner of digital or a part of digital, your team might be the target of their frustration. So instead of allowing them to harm morale in your department or your team, or make it a reason to beat yet more isolated silos, see this as an opportunity to start conversations and say, okay, fine, you don't like the way things are? I don't either. In fact, if we could do things in a more agile way, I would do these things. And in order to know what to say at that point, you need to study Agile methods. So learn about Lean UX. There's a bunch out there. Read the blogs of product design teams. Product design teams are incredibly willing to share their experiences. So Airbnb has a great blog, Netflix has a great blog, Spotify has a great blog, and immerse yourself in the world of Agile as a whole, and it will pay off. Amongst other things, it will show you where you could improve. So you might not be able to put to practice design thinking and start doing Kanban boards and design sprints and guerrilla testing straight away. But just thinking about how you would and the benefits you would get is going to give you more ideas and inspire others in becoming your allies. So thinking critically about your processes will highlight what is the low-hanging fruit. And thus you can then test out new ways of doing things and use the results to show other stakeholders and senior management the value of Agile. And this takes me to the third lesson. So once you understand and think Agile and Lean and have identified how you could improve things, then you can start an iterative process by taking up pilot projects of incremental improvement. So what I'm talking about is, for example, the course finder functionality, a landing page for a new campaign, a new system that needs to be integrated, that faculty request that has been sitting forever in the back burner. Can you find a small project with funding in place that you could run in an Agile fashion? And if your organization is particularly wedded to a waterfall approach and has this really complicated procurement processes, it might be very difficult to identify the right project. Stakeholders might be too personally invested to consider user research, for example, or the funding might come off with too many sign-off points, or you might only have a limited say into how things are run. Incremental change not only applies to digital products, it applies to organizations as well. Even a couple of design sprints might show the value of iterative design, rapid prototyping, and user testing. After all, if we have enough user data, then we don't need to have endless discussions about what the user would do. And the reality is that Agile is not for digital. So this evangelism shouldn't be limited to the digital ecosystem. To really guarantee buy-in for Agile methods, you need to demonstrate how they can be applied to any problem, not just the ones related to the digital ecosystem. And this happens across organizations. When there's Agile evangelists within their teams and they start demonstrating the value of Agile, the organization as a whole becomes drawn in by the methodology and starts running design sprints for things as varied as how to name a new product, not just to solve digital problems. And then bigger projects, such as CMS or CRM upgrades, offer different challenges and opportunities. And you can take advantage of them to reshape not only your ecosystem, but the culture as well. And the fact is, you do not have the luxury of running big projects in anything but an Agile fashion. So smaller projects might drive value from Agile. Big projects need to be Agile necessarily, because otherwise they will fail. They will never get off the ground, as we were saying. And in this process, external consultants and agencies are the essential ally. So at present, for example, we understand Agile methods and the difficulty of implementing them at places with strong silos. But we can be your critical friends. So we have your best interests at heart, but we won't be shy in telling you or other stakeholders in your organization when a choice would be against your best interest. And we're not afraid to speak up against silos, and we're not afraid to speak up against waterfall methodology. And in discussing the shape and outcomes of a project, we also act as the voice of the person that is not in the room, which is the end user. So in 2 decades of working with universities, we have developed a lot of knowledge about the people that these universities interact with. And in an iterative fashion, we are always validating that knowledge. So for example, Gen Z is about to become the dominant group amongst prospective undergraduate students. And we need to understand that their generational zeitgeist is as far from the millennials that preceded them as the millennials are different from Gen Xers, and Gen Xers are different from baby boomers. An external agency, we aren't tied to your organizational hierarchy or politics. We can build bridges between departments. We can speak to stakeholders with more frankness. We can act as evangelists without the perception that we have a conflict of interest. And essentially, This goes beyond just interacting with different departments. As an external provider, we can help you shape an overarching vision for the entire student experience, how your project that we're helping with fits within that. So big projects such as the design or deployment of a new major system, whether it's a CMS, student information system, CRM, whatever, that is led by an external contractor can be really transformative. So, and by picking a provider that is committed to deliver a change in your organization and not just a product, you make sure that you get closer to a true agile state. And what could this agile state look like? So let's imagine this future for a bit. So let's imagine that you were the digital manager now of a university, or the university team that oversees the entire digital ecosystem. So you might see them in a specific team, but you are the end owner of the entire digital estate. And while others might administer specific systems, you are responsible for how the experience is delivered to the end user. You might not own the systems themselves, but you own the experience of interacting with the entirety of the digital ecosystem. And users, in fact, are at the center of everything you do. So, and this means students, but not only. So when a request comes in for a new feature, so whether it's a new set of pages for the website or a complex piece of functionality, you as the stakeholder for data to back it up. If there is only a perception or a hunch, you can then help the stakeholder to do research to determine if this is really a problem. So if the need is internal, you help them find how it will benefit users. So this process leads to you not hearing any more requests for features. So stakeholders know that their task is only to identify the problem and whether it is a thing. And then it's back to you with the experts at your team and your allies at an external agency to build the solution. Sometimes, maybe most of the time, you don't have enough resources to research the problem or to design text and build a solution. Still, you can keep a backlog of issues and address them in different ways. So for example, is there a stopgap solution that will provide more insight? Can you keep learning about the issue even if you can do little to fix it? Can you leverage any tools at your disposal? So if the design of your digital ecosystem is flexible and scalable, the answer can be yes. A content page can signpost students to someone that can help them offline while the self-service digital solution is built. The number of students accessing the service is, in itself, a valuable metric to build a business case for funding or resources. If someone in your team sits outside the room for a few hours and does fast interviews, as these people are, serving that need, then you can understand the problem even better. And when that isn't enough, you can always count on external providers. Rather than conduct a complicated tender process, you can engage them in shorter projects. But to do this successfully, the first one is that the provider needs to be committed to working in an agile fashion. You have collected data and understand the problem well. You only need someone to test and deliver a solution. A couple of design sprints later, you're ready to go with a minimum viable product. And then the second thing you need is an ecosystem that has been deliberately designed and built as a modular solution. You don't need to build an entire ecosystem in one go, but an ecosystem needs to be designed to integrate and to scale. Then you can phase it or change parts of it without having an impact over the rest. Even third-party systems can become an integral part of your ecosystem through web services. So this future is not a distant utopia. And as I said, there are things you can start doing today. Even thinking of your different systems as a digital ecosystem is a step forward. And there will be a momentum for change. The more you embrace and apply Agile, the easier it will be to identify opportunities to change and to deliver effectively on them. Agile product teams are well into becoming the norm in the digital space. Some of the world's most valuable companies are run top to bottom with that philosophy. So universities have the chance to learn from them. While you might not work at either Silicon Valley or Massachusetts, you still have a chance to help differentiate your organization as a true university of the future, and that is by embracing Agile. And as I hope I have demonstrated today, it's not something that's impossible to do. So if there's any questions, I could answer them. I mean, you're welcome to get in touch with us, certainly, and ask any follow-up questions. And we are We would love to have many discussions about this. Um, we will be sharing the recording of the webinar and the slides, so you can take them at your own pace if this was a bit too quick to fit in the half an hour we have allotted for it. Thank you very much, and yeah, I'm totally open for it, and would love to discuss more if you have any questions or comments, or if we can have a chat about how we can do this at your university. Thank you very much.